What's going on? It's JohnnyVTV live on this Friday, January 6th, the first show of 2023, and I wouldn't want to do it with anybody else except my co-host, Joey Cals. Happy New Year, kid. How you doing?
Happy New Year. Bro, we just got back from Tampa. Had a nice little week down there. Got to see a little bit of everything. For the first time, we ended up driving towards St. Pete because that's where my cousin is now. He moved down there with his fiance. He's got a nice apartment about 15 to 20 minutes from the beach and everything going on over there. So I got to see the pier. I got to see what the marina looks like over there because we went on the boat one of those days. And we got to go around downtown Tampa a couple of times. The weather was really, really nice. There was one day where it was like iffy, and it wasn't even that bad outside. It was just cloudy, not really muggy. But yeah, I was back at your old stomping ground, so that was a lot of fun.
He says Tampa though, so like you're cut. All right. Tampa, St. Pete's very.
He's closer to St. Pete, but everybody says Tampa.
St. Pete's unbelievable. I love St. Pete. St. Pete's.
I love St. Pete.
St. Pete's a great place to go out. It's a great
Absolutely.
place to go hit the beach. I mean, that's usually where everybody in Tampa goes to the beach. It's in St. Pete. Most of the people I know don't drive 45 minutes to Clearwater. But I mean, you live in St. Pete. It's weird though, right? Because you would think it's all the same thing, but there's a rivalry low key between the St. Pete and the Tampa type of people where I've met a ton of people.
Two different atmospheres.
Yeah. I mean, they're both amazing, but they're different. They're different.
Right.
And so I equate it to how I grew up. If I lived in North Jersey, that's one part. But then if I wanted to go to New York, even though it's close, you still get the whole crew, and it's a different vibe. You know what I'm saying? So I could understand that, but it's the St. Pete people. They're like, "Oh, you live in Tampa?" I was like, "Bro, what do you mean?"
Yeah,
I don't know.
I noticed that.
I would definitely get a place in St. Pete though. St. Pete is
it was a vibe. Yeah, I was a big fan of that down there.
So anyway, I'm glad you had a new year. Happy New Year. Happy you came back from my old stomping grounds. Joe, there's a lot of news that's breaking around the league, so let's get right to it. First off, we are so thrilled that Damar Hamlin, the Buffalo Bills safety, is doing miles better. He was FaceTiming his team, breathing tube out of his mouth. It's just unbelievable to see. The power of prayer is real. It's true. We thank God, and he's on the right track, and we just hope he keeps getting better. This is unbelievable news. Such a quick turnaround. Shout out to the first responders, the Buffalo Bills coach that performed CPR and kept him going, and then the first responders that get on the field, and then the people at UC, University of Cincinnati Hospital, that really made the difference. And we're so happy that he was able to recover so quickly, and he's on his way. So, thank God. I mean, that's the most important thing. We couldn't ask for more in that regard.
Yeah, we know, spoken with teammates since all of this has happened now within the last 24 hours or so. Let me tell you something. There's always been this concern regarding the NFL about what would happen in the case of a super emergency where something happened like this on the field where a player's life was in jeopardy, started taking a turn for the worse. So we knock the NFL, we make fun of the NFL, right? But it is very evident here that the protocols that they did have in place. Now, the reports that they were going to continue the game, I don't know if those were true or not. They were circulating. Who cares about that? What we know is that the NFL, the protocols that are in place, what they set up, very clearly worked in this scenario. And you are right. The assistant coach deserves credit for administering the CPR and helping the process. But it worked here. And it seems like if all goes well, and this seems like it's going to continue to trend well, Damar Hamlin's life was saved. He's got his brain functioning. And that is super important because to be in the position that he was in, I believe he was in a medically induced coma for a while because they kept him asleep. That is very, very dicey because the longer that happens, the less likely you are to regain most of your brain functioning, right? So the fact that he's able to do that is simply tremendous. This is a very, very amazing story, and it very clearly shows that what the NFL has currently in place is working. And now that they can learn from this, they can take this scenario, figure out, okay, how can we improve upon this and move forward? But we're just so fucking happy. Sorry to curse.
That's right. No, it's warranted. No, we are so happy. We are so happy. And like in a true football guy move, right? Apparently, I read a report. I think it was confirmed, but forgive me if it wasn't. When he woke up, the first thing he asked was like, "Did we win the game?" Like true football guy.
True
move.
football
It's
guy.
like, bro, all he cares about is like, did we win the game, bro? Like that's a gamer, bro. That's a gamer. That's awesome. And
I'll tell you
was so
something
cool.
too. The interview with his family, especially the interview that his uncle gave, right? And I forgot the exact wording of it because I don't have the quote in front of me. But the way he was articulate, the way he was composed, despite the whole situation, right? It seems like he really comes from a great family, and everything with the toy drive and everybody donating, right? This is one of those stories where you hear so much in the news about negativity, bad things happening, right? This is something where everybody collectively came together for the greater good. And you're right, the power of prayer, it mattered here. I undoubtedly believe that it ultimately helped Amar pull through. And you're right, total football guy move, right?
I know, right? Total football. Yeah. So I actually have something. We're gonna talk a little bit about this later here. So other news here: Lamar Jackson, he's out, and the reason. So it doesn't matter necessarily because the Ravens are in the playoffs, but there's still a scenario where I think the Ravens could win the division, which is a big difference because that's seeding, that's hosting a home field playoff game, and like. Now there's the whole thing about the coin flip. But like they need to win that game to be in that conversation. And like if they lose, they're going to be stuck in the 6th seed. So if they're stuck in the 6th seed, like then you have to go to Cincinnati or potentially Buffalo. I would probably think it's going to be Cincinnati that you'd have to go to. There's a lot of moving parts in terms of all this stuff, but this is a big one, bro. Baltimore, Lamar Jackson hasn't played in like 6 weeks.
No.
And so like they don't even know 100% if he's going to play next week. And which with the PCL sprain and like when you combine the injuries with the fact that I think he doesn't want to play because he doesn't have a new contract. God forbid he goes out there and it makes it worse. And now he's losing himself a deal where he might get $250 million. Now, somebody's going to buy him on a discount or he's going to get franchise tagged, in another year in Baltimore and maybe make just whatever the tag is going to be for a quarterback. But I don't know. What do you make of this situation?
Is it possible that we have seen Lamar Jackson play his last game in Baltimore? Because I've been thinking about this. And guy of his caliber, what he's done already, he's won an MVP. He would very clearly be the best quarterback in his prime to hit the market in a long time. Say what you want about him. I don't know if he's quite in that top 5 category anymore, but it's very evident that when he is on the field, he is a difference maker. And what we have seen from the Ravens the last couple of years is that even though this team at times has had some weapons to work with, Mark Andrews has primarily been his guy, right? They're like oil and vinegar together. They haven't had a true number 1 receiver since he's been there. They've tried to draft guys, tried to acquire guys, hasn't worked out. They drafted J.K. Dobbins, who has not been able to stay healthy since he was drafted, right? So I think it's certainly possible. And if I'm Lamar Jackson, why would you want to play, right? The Bengals here they're in an interesting spot. Now, I don't remember all the scenarios off the top of my head, but can they still get the 1 seed, or is that just for the Bills and the Chiefs?
I think that's for the Bills and the Chiefs because
but they can get the 2.
The
right?
Bengals are a game behind. Like the Bengals have a win back, but it goes by win percentage.
Right. So there's a scenario, I think, where the Chiefs could be the 1, the Bengals could be the 2, and the Bills could be the 3. Is that correct?
I believe so. I'm still trying to sift through all of this stuff, but I mean, I think that could be a case. Right. The most likely case here is Kansas City is going to be the 1, Buffalo is going to be the 2, Cincinnati is going to be the 3. That's the most likely case.
Yeah, so Cincinnati has something to play for in this game as well.
Yeah.
So I really think that if this game matters and they want Lamar to play, sure, but I don't think he's going to play. And if he doesn't play this week, is he going to play for their wild card round playoff game? Are they going to clear him? And at that point, you're really starting to ask. It's like, has Lamar Jackson played his last game? Because I think the Ravens right now they're at the fork in the road point, because what we've seen here from the Steelers the last couple of weeks, we've seen, even though Kenny Pickett hasn't played great, he's put together a couple of good drives at the end of games here where you could say to yourself, okay, this guy, if we give him the right atmosphere to continue to improve, he could be the guy, right? The Browns, they struggled this year. They didn't have Watson. A lot of things were up in the air, right? I think they'll round out and they'll be a better team next year too. And the Bengals are very good, and they're still the class of this division coming off the Super Bowl appearance. So what are the Ravens going to do? They're very clearly at a fork in the road. So I think Lamar might be gone.
It's a fair point. I've been wondering the same thing. I went on with Corey Parson, Corey Nando and friends last week, and we had a good conversation. I've been speaking to Corey a lot over the last couple of weeks. We've done a lot of shows together, and one of the points was like, I just don't know if Lamar Jackson's going to be the quarterback. And I was like, I think the Jets need to take a long, hard look at Lamar. I think
both New York teams are going to be in on this as well.
I think a lot of teams, if Lamar Jackson misses, and it depends if they end up franchise tagging him, and it really depends on that regard. But I think honestly, like a lot of teams are going to be, and even the Dolphins, like Tua had a great year for when he was on the field, no doubt. And I think that was put up time or shut up time, but. Dude, if you get Lamar Jackson on the Miami Dolphins, they're a track team. They're a track team probably unlike we've ever seen.
Yes.
Like we've ever seen, bro. You got guys that are running sub 4.4 at running back. You got two guys that run 4.3 or better at wide receiver, and you got a quarterback who runs 4.3. Like, it's ridiculous. So I think a lot of teams are going to be in. I think Lamar might be done, and I think the Ravens, they don't really have a chance here to make a deep run in the playoffs. And with that being said, with Baltimore, they also impact what the Chargers are going to do. So if the Ravens lose, which I think they're going to, especially with Lamar missing, they play at 1 o'clock, and then the Chargers play at 4. So the Chargers recently flipped from favorites to underdogs. Now they're about 2.5 point dogs in Denver, because if the Ravens lose, then obviously Justin Herbert's going to sit and get a week of rest before he has to go play next week at the winner of Tennessee or Jacksonville. That's if the Ravens lose first, which obviously LA has the pleasure of knowing before they even take the field what they need. So you got Herbert probably sitting. McCaffrey, I'm hearing, is probably going to sit. We're seeing that the Niners probably won't rush him. They don't need to. We're gonna say that San Francisco gets the 2 seed because the Eagles should win, get the 1 seed, and then you got Eli Mitchell coming back, so it's gonna be between him and Jordan Mason. There's no reason to throw McCaffrey out there again. So those are some key guys that are probably gonna miss Week 18. It really throws a wrinkle in the lines.
Yeah, and a lot of these lines are very, very high too. Like you mentioned, the Giants-Eagles line. That line started at 13.5 and 14, right? And there's the possibility that Jalen Hurts may play this game. Now, I think it's important that the Eagles try to go out and win this game, because that NFC number 1 seed is up in the air. But even then, I mean, it seems very, very high, especially for a Giants team the last couple of weeks here. Played Minnesota very, very close, right down to the wire on the road. They came out and they smacked the Colts the following week. The Giants this season, we mentioned this previously on a show, they like to play 1-score games, right? And say what you want about them. I don't know if they're great or not. Could they win a playoff game? Maybe one, sure. But it seems like this team has not been respected all season long here. And Gardner Minshew and the Eagles played a stinky game at home last week against the Saints. A game that, based on the pedigree of their overall body of work from, every game before then, I mean, that game shouldn't have played out the way it did, but it did, right? So, I don't know.
Yeah, but do you think the Giants backups are going to cover 14? There's a lot of tickets on them. I mean, they're backups, but this is a big number. It's a big number.
And it's the same thing with the Niners. But at least with the Niners, I feel like we know what Brock Purdy is, and we know the Cardinals quarterback situation, what it is. So that line being driven up makes sense to me. The Giants, for all intents and purposes, will likely play their starters at least through the first half, if not into the third quarter, and then you may see the mass.
I don't know, though. I think Dable said they were going to sit. I think it's likely they're going to sit.
I mean, we'll see. But like I said, the Eagles they need that game. So I feel like that game is more likely to be a competitive game. But I was just mentioning they're really, really high lines for those two games.
Yeah. I mean, it depends, starter, rust versus rest, that kind of thing. Like if the Giants are actually going to sit all their guys or they're going to play them at all. I mean, I think a week off could do them pretty good. I probably would like, if I was a Giants fan, I'd like to see them play the first quarter so they don't take a complete full week off. I mean, you don't want to be rusty. A lot of these guys haven't played in a playoff game, so this is a young group. So you got to make sure you're keeping momentum going. You don't want to sit the whole game if you don't have to. Like the Giants they're clicking now. They're starting to find their groove a little bit, and rest is good. But that's why I'd probably say play like the first quarter, and then from that point on, then you could sit them. So Joe, we still have several awards that need to be addressed. Things like Offensive Player of the Year, it's probably either Justin Jefferson, most likely, or Tyreek Hill if he has a huge game on Sunday. Defensive Player of the Year, my boy Nicky Bosa, Nicky Smolder Bear, he's got it locked up. Defensive Rookie of the Year should be Sauce Gardner, no question about that. But then there's other ones, right? There is Offensive Rookie of the Year,
Yep.
Coach of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, and MVP. Starting with Offensive Rookie of the Year, who do you think is going to get it?
I think they're going to give it to Kenneth Walker. Now, I don't have the odds in front of me. You could read all the odds, so I'll provide the color here. But if I'm not mistaken, coming off of last week's game, which was the Jets-Seahawks game where the Jets were stinky, Garrett Wilson entering that game was the favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Kenneth Walker was the second choice on the board. And after that game, their odds flipped. So with recency bias playing a huge factor, with a lot of people having the impression with Geno Smith and what the Seahawks were able to do this season kind of unexpectedly, I think Kenneth Walker, this is his award to lose now. I think if he has a really good wrap to the season here in the Seahawks last game against the Rams at home, which I think is a money spot for them because I think they can put up good numbers. He could put up good numbers on the ground. I think this is going to be Kenneth Walker's award to lose.
I disagree with you. I put up a whole Twitter thread why. All of these are connected. MVP is not connected. Let's get it out of the way. I think MVP is Mahomes. He's got an outside chance at getting the single-season pass yards record. I think as long as the Chiefs win, Mahomes has got it. Even if they don't win, I still think he's going to get the MVP. I just don't see how anybody else is going to get it at this juncture. The other three are all connected, and here's why. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Kenneth Walker's a favorite. This has been a soft market all season. Even in the summer, nobody knew where to go. I talked to some of the smartest guys in the business. They're like, I have no idea. We have no idea where to go. Olave was my guy, and he's arguably been the best rookie receiver in the class throughout the whole season, and he's missed time, and he's still getting nonstop disrespect in the market. I mean, the Saints aren't good. They really didn't have much of a chance. We get it, but still, Kenneth Walker, to me, he won't win, and here's why. Geno Smith is my pick, and I think he's going to be Comeback Player of the Year. He's been pretty much the favorite all season, rightfully so. McCaffrey coming out of nowhere doesn't deserve it. I don't understand why McCaffrey's on this list. Because of that, I don't think Seattle's going to get 2 awards, especially if the Seahawks team doesn't make the playoffs. You're going to give them 2 awards. I think their one award would be Geno Smith. So therefore, Kenneth Walker wouldn't get it. Not to mention, Walker might not even get 1,000 yards rushing. I don't know how you give it to a guy who doesn't get 1,000 yards rushing. That's 1. 2, Brock Purdy's not going to win because this is only going to be his 6th game starting or extended almost full game action. While his stats are impressive and he's been so far undefeated as the starter, the guy that took over in the Dolphins game, he has the best roster in football, arguably. He plays in arguably the best system. So all this Brock Purdy love and support is going to be coming in the form of the Kyle Shanahan Coach of the Year. Shanahan working on his third quarterback of the season, could finish the season on a 10-game winning streak. Bosa already got the Defensive Player of the Year, in my opinion. I think a lot of people think it's going to be locked up. Parsons shouldn't really have a shot. Therefore, I think the Niners are going to get 2 awards. Shanahan is the success behind Brock Purdy. Eliminates him. Garrett Wilson is, to me, the 1A right now. If the season ended today, the Jets obviously missed the playoffs. The Steelers don't make the playoffs. It's Garrett Wilson's award. Garrett Wilson's been the most consistent receiver in football as a rookie, along with Chris Olave. And right now he's got slightly better numbers. Kenny Pickett is interesting, and I took a big ticket on – like I smashed with a sledgehammer Kenny Pickett. Here's why. The Steelers have an outside chance to make the playoffs if the Jets win against Miami and the Bills win against the Patriots, which we expect. So should the Steelers beat the Browns, Kenny Pickett will have taken a Steelers team that was 2-6 to 9-8 with several game-winning drives. While his stats are not good, they're not good. They're very bad. I think it's going to carry more weight on the turnaround of this season, and it's going to speak to more volumes of the winning. We've seen this in the past where Sam Bradford in 2010 won Offensive Rookie of the Year on a 7-9 Rams team with bad numbers, and he beat out Mike Williams of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the time, who went 10-6. He had like 960 yards and 11 touchdowns, beat him out. So I think if that happens, Kenny Pickett should be the guy, and he's got a very good chance. If not, I still think it's Garrett Wilson. Floor is yours.
I mean, you always come prepared, pal. Always come prepared. I don't disagree on the Kenny Pickett point because I thought about this as well. And in my mind, I'm thinking if the Steelers make the playoffs, I think people are going to look at that more as an overall body of work type of thing because since TJ Watt came back, the Steelers defense has been pretty good, right? So I think even though Pickett has been the bus driver that they needed him to be in order for them to pull out these wins in these late game scenarios, I think the stats aren't sexy enough for him to vault more than one guy to be the winner of the award. But I don't disagree with your logic. And if that happens, if the Steelers make the playoffs and you cash a ticket, I'll be happy for you, pal. But yeah, I mean, it's intriguing, the whole Seattle getting 2 awards thing. And you're right. Will they give them 2 awards if they're not a playoff team, which is certainly a likely scenario? I just think Kenny Walker's been very impressive the whole season.
He has, but I mean, he also, listen, he has been impressive. And I was a big fan of Kenny Walker coming out of Michigan State. Like, I really loved watching him last year, run towards that Heisman. There's something else to remember. And listen, it doesn't mean teams can't win multiple awards. We've seen it a million times, and I think the Niners are going to be the clear example that win 2 awards this year. Defensive Player of the Year and Coach of the Year. But they like to typically spread it around. Like, if there's really no other team that's going to – if there's no other person that steps up, like I said, Garrett Wilson's the 1A to me. Pickett's the 1B. If the Steelers don't win. Because, Sauce Gardner's going to get the Defensive Rookie of the Year, so the Jets might actually get 2 awards. But they like to spread it around. So if Kenny Pickett gives himself a case by getting the Steelers into the playoffs, then you would think about Seattle should get one award with Geno. The Jets should get 1 award with Sauce. The Niners will get 2 awards, so Brock Purdy won't get it. Even Kenny Pickett and the Steelers. Kenny Pickett replacing the Big Ben era. In the first year out of the Big Ben era, they make the playoffs. Like, the stats are going to be – they're going to be terrible. They're going to be terrible, but they might not look at that. They might look at the winning, and they might look at the fact that, Pickett's not been that bad statistically over the last, 4 weeks. He's got, 4 touchdowns to 1 interception over the last 3 or 4 games. So I think that's where we can look at it. It's not a definite. There's a reason why Pickett's 20-1 right now, but I think realistically, if he leads them to the playoffs, that's it, man. That's it. I think it's either him or Garrett who's going to win. And like I said, if Kenny Walker, who's banged up and he's sick right now, let's say he goes out against the Rams, who have been playing, for the most part, pretty solid over the last month since they've been out of it, right? let's say he goes out there, he has like 12 carries for 50 yards, comes up short of 1,000 yards. You're going to give an offensive rookie of the year to a running back who didn't even have 1,000 yards? I don't see it. And I don't see Brock Purdy getting it either. That, to me, that leaves one of the other two.
Yeah, Brock Purdy.
That's my opinion.
If you're a rookie
maybe
quarterback,
I'm completely wrong. This offensive rookie of the year market has been very difficult to price the entire season.
Yeah, because there hasn't really been one standout player. But you're right on Purdy.
Like
6 games is not going to do it.
6.5 games.
But you're right. That's going to factor into Kyle Shanahan winning Coach of the Year. So.
Yeah, that's my opinion on it. Listen, like Joe, this is where I've been seeing it. This is how I've rationalized it. And listen, the dominoes still need to fall into place, but that's why I'm getting ahead of it. And I want to remind people that if you're betting a futures market, especially in the awards, you need to bet it before tomorrow, because I think once tomorrow the game starts, I think it's going to lock for the season. So if there's any futures bet you want to get in, I would get it in before tomorrow starts with the Chiefs-Raiders game. That's important. Obviously, with the Offensive Rookie of the Year, I think I addressed pretty much every other award, right?
Yes.
Would you agree with me? Shanahan gets Coach of the Year and Geno gets Comeback Player of the Year?
Yeah, I think those two, while nothing is virtually a lock, I think the overall body of work speaks for itself. And you have to remember something, too. There was a point where the Seahawks were kind of in that race for the NFC West for a little bit. We didn't know how bad the Rams were really going to be until the midway point of the season, because coming off the Super Bowl win, you gave them the benefit of the doubt. Team had pedigree, right? The Cardinals were a playoff team last year. So for the first 5, 6, 7 weeks, it wasn't really necessarily jumbled up, but the 49ers weren't really oh, this team is going to win the NFC West, right? And there were teams in the NFC like the Eagles, like the Vikings, right? People still believed in the Packers. People still believe in the Buccaneers, and the Packers and Buccaneers are rounding into teams that look really good heading into the playoffs. But the 49ers were no slam dunk, not even close. They didn't have Christian McCaffrey, right? This team is entirely different, and they look like geniuses because I think they actually bought low on McCaffrey, right? And if Deebo Samuel stays healthy, if Kittle can stay healthy, if a majority of the trenches can stay healthy, right? This, you're right. It's the best overall roster in the NFC right now, but I'm not going to use that to knock Shanahan in any way, because for the first half of the season, and up until I would say the Jimmy G injury as well, we weren't really too sure what the 49ers were. Now I look at the 49ers and I'm saying to myself, I think they're the best team in the NFC. On a neutral field, if you gave me the Eagles and the Niners right now in a playoff game, I would take the Niners. If you gave me the Cowboys and the Niners, even on the road, we saw the Niners beat the Cowboys last year. So on the road, neutral field, I'm taking the Niners. Same thing with the Vikings. Niners, Vikings, neutral field. I would take the 49ers in every one-on-one playoff scenario too. The only game that I think would be a really true toss-up would probably be a road game if the Niners would have to go to Green Bay, and that's not the case.
Most likely, unfortunately. Yeah, but what about the Green Bay is looking like they're going to have to come to San Francisco?
Right. Well, that's what I was saying. There would be a case if San Francisco had to go to Green Bay, which is obviously not going to happen, right? So Green Bay, with the way they're playing now,
yeah, but you're not worried that the Niners are going to have to play Green Bay?
I think the Packers could clip them, sure. Because I think the Packers right now are built for that game in the playoffs. That's not a high-scoring game.
I put out a thing, Joe. I put out a thing. I put out a tweet. I put it in my article last week. I've been saying it for the last couple of weeks. The NFC is going to ruthlessly let Green Bay back into the dance. They're going to rue the day.
I told you
they do not want to see Green Bay. So, for all when
What are the Packers right now to win the NFC? Plus 1400.
When did you tell me?
I told you when they were what? Well, I think when they were 5-8 when they won the game that made them 6-8. So at the time, what were they to win the NFC? They were like plus 4,000, right? Now they're plus 1,400. So evidently, the people who are making the odds agree with us, right? But that is really the only scenario, because in every other scenario, I think the 49ers heads up are like the best team in the NFC. But if the NFC Championship game, if that were to be like if the Niners were to get the 3 seed and it would be like the Packers and the Niners, I don't know, have all the scenarios on top of my head. I mean, it would be really, really hard to bet against a team in Green Bay, because they're a different team this year than they have been in years past, because they're going to rely more on Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon to run the ball, to kill the clock, and take possession away from other teams, right? And usually teams that do that or have that philosophy going into the playoffs usually kind of have the game manager quarterback, right? They have the Ryan Tannehills of the world, right, to get by. They don't have guys like Aaron Rodgers, who, even though his receiving core has been depleted this season, you have Christian Watson emerging as a guy who can at least be a red zone threat once they get there, right? So they have a couple of different ways to beat you in the red zone, and it's not like Rodgers doesn't lack for talent, right? So this Packers team kind of reminds me of the team that made the run to the Super Bowl the first time in 2010. The difference is obviously that team had Greg Jennings and Jordy Nelson, which this team does not have. But the manner that they can go on the road as the late seed and get the right matchups, I see it. But yeah, I like the 49ers. I think they're the best team in the NFC. We have a lot of people who like the Cowboys. I'm not really too sure about Dak, right? And you keep going on and on and on. And that's like I said about the Giants before. They played very, very good this season. The Giants clearly have a good pass rush, like those teams that won the Super Bowl. And they've been able to keep games close, one-score type of games. Those are the kinds of games that you need to play in the playoffs. But I don't trust Daniel Jones. I don't think they have enough weapons-wise to do that, even though they played well the last couple of weeks. So they seem more to me like a team that can win one game, if that. They get the right matchup. And I think a rematch with the Vikings could be that type of matchup that they need. But I can't see them going any further, right? So a lot of this also is about Jalen Hurts too, because and we'll get into the MVP discussion shortly once you come back. But I'm very curious to see if Jalen Hurts does play. How does he play? Does he look like he's limbering a little bit? How are they going to use him? Because if he does play, a high percentage of his plays this season have been designated run plays. So obviously they're not going to want to put him in harm's way or any type of danger, or put him in any threat to re-injure himself if that's the case, right? So this is going to be interesting, because you think Mahomes has the MVP locked up. I still disagree with you there, but I think what happened with the Monday Night Football game, not having Joe Burrow and Josh Allen play out that full game under the circumstances, it's probably a two-horse race. But I think with the way the Eagles played last week, Gardner Minshew looked good against Dallas. They did not look good against the Saints last week, as I alluded to earlier. I think that played heavily into Jalen Hurts' favor. There's a case now that you could say that, okay, if the Eagles didn't have Jalen Hurts, right, would they still be a playoff team? Based on everything, I would say, sure, they'd be a playoff team. But if they I think the difference between Jalen Hurts and no Jalen Hurts is the Eagles are probably a borderline playoff team. Maybe they get in as one of the wild cards and the number 1 seed, right? So I think value-wise, that's good enough to be able to push him ahead in the MVP race, despite what Patrick Mahomes has worked with and him exploding the season, having all those stats. Okay, are we back here? That was one real. I did my best, pal. I
appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my connection today, but no, it's Mahomes. I'm not even hearing a Jalen Hurts argument. He missed 2 games. Statistically, he's way too behind here, and just no, it's not going to happen. But We got to move on here. So I want to get your thoughts real quick about the Tennessee Titans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're laying 6.5 at home. This is for the AFC South crown. I cannot believe the Titans have lost 5 in a row and just completely given away their lead. The Jaguars had no business even being in this position. The Jaguars had no business. None. How are they a touchdown favorite to win the South? I don't get it.
I think the line is a little high. But
I don't know, dude. The line wouldn't be this high if Ryan Tannehill was starting. But it's Joshua Dobbs, the third stringer, not even Malik Willis, the second stringer. So, I got to be honest. I think it is a high line here. I would look to stay off of the spread. My favorite play in this game, and I put out a wild stat about it. Wild. Derrick Henry over 21.5 rush attempts. The reason I like it, so they have Josh Dobbs, the third stringer, right? Their only chance to win is if Henry touches the ball like every play. If he's constantly involved.
He's gonna need 30 touches. That's the only way to win the game.
I agree with you. I mean, to complement or to really supplement the lack of passing game that we expect in Jacksonville. I mean, Tennessee should have ran all over Jacksonville in the first meeting. They blew that game, and then they ended up getting blown out by the Jags. But here's this crazy stat. In Derrick Henry's career, the Tennessee Titans are 22-1 when Henry has at least 26 carries. Do you know how unbelievable that is?
Yeah.
The only time they lost was in 2021 when they played the Jets. they threw the game. They lost to the Jets. But, that goes to show. So, I think Derrick Henry needs to have 30 carries in this game. I think that's how they're going to win. And, obviously the key is you can't get behind. You can't get behind 17 points. You know what I'm saying? You need to keep within game script so Henry is still a threat. And, this whole nonsense that, they'll take him off the field on third down with this pass-catching thing, I think that's so stupid. I think you're a dead giveaway. It completely not only changes your offense, but it, tips the defense of what you're doing. But that's my favorite look. I think Henry smashes 21.5 carries. I think he's good for at least 25.
Oh, yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, assume the Titans are going to run 60 plays, right?
Yeah.
How many times is Henry going to touch the ball in those 60 plays? It's got to be 30. Could be over 30, right? I do think, though, that what they're going to need to do is they're going to have to get creative in terms of how they use Henry, right? So I think you're going to see some wacky stuff from Vrabel in this game because, I don't think Joshua Dobbs is any good. Malik Willis wasn't really good either. And I think that what you've seen from Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson, Doug Peterson's not going to win Coach of the Year, but he's been right there.
Maybe in any other year. Maybe
in any other year. He deserves some love, though, because what he did this year, he's been pretty good. Been really, really good with this team. Yeah, so the Titans' best hope is that if you're halfway through the third quarter and you're within 10, just keep going. And if you go down by 14 or more, I think the game is over because it's going to be impossible for you to come back. But they're going to have to get creative. And when I say creative, I mean they're going to have to run some screen passes to Henry, right? They're going to have to line him up a little bit in different ways in order to get him the ball out in space so that he can be better utilized, right? This can't be a game where they dive 20 of the 30 carry touches that he's going to get right into the line. It's they're going to have to try to maximize how they use him against the Jags defense. But listen, if they beat the Jaguars the first time, and that game wasn't really close the first time. I mean, they really let that game get away from them. But yeah, I didn't see this total collapse by the Titans coming because halfway through the season, I thought they were a pretty solid team. And I like Vrabel as a coach, but they just haven't been able to stay healthy, So another thing you have to think, another thing you have to take into account is, are we really going to run Derrick Henry into the ground to win this game, to set up a a scenario where we win the AFC South at 8-9, and then who would they draw? Would it be the Ravens? Right, Ravens Titans.
Most likely, I mean, it depends, but most likely they play the Chargers, and that's a plus matchup. So, like, yeah, I mean, you got to do what you got to do to survive, and then you figure it out. Like, you got to do what you got to do to survive. Like, I mean,
So if the
this
Ravens,
is it.
so if the Titans win, the Ravens lose, and the Chargers win, which is not totally unlikely.
It doesn't matter if the Ravens lose. If the Ravens lose, the Chargers are the 5 seed.
Okay.
And so the Chargers would draw the winner of Jacksonville, Tennessee.
And as we know, the Chargers' run defense is stinky, and that's them going 2
It's
times.
coming back to life a little bit, but yeah, it's still relatively overall bad. So it's still a bottom 5, bottom 8 unit.
Yeah, I want to see. I think the best case scenario for Justin Herbert is we should see him in a playoff game against the Titans and the Jaguars, because that's the type of game where if he's as good as everybody thinks he is, and you know how I feel about him. I think he's a good player. I just think he's the sexy internet Twitter stats fantasy guy, right? There's always one of those guys. That's exactly what he is.
He's not. No, he's not.
Yeah, he is. Let him win a playoff game first. That would be the test. That would be the
coach is a moron.
We'll see.
In any case, all right. Well, I'm so glad I got your analysis on that one. Here's the big one, though, that I think everybody's looking forward to. It's flexing the Sunday Night Football. It's the Detroit Lions at the Green Bay Packers, -4.5, laying almost the Royal Mint. That could be a big question mark here. I don't think Green Bay gets swept twice in the same season by the Detroit Lions. Not to mention, Aaron Rodgers is 10-2 against this Lions team at home over the course of his career. So, like, this is a really one to – it's difficult envisioning this. Like, Green Bay's hot right now. They're going to lose to the Lions. Like, the Lions – listen, man, I had a lot of respect for them coming into the year. I really did. Like, anybody that listened to me, like, saw my article, like, I said the Lions were a playoff team. Dan Campbell was my preseason coach of the year. I had a lot of love for the Lions. I thought they had a really good shot to make some noise there. I just don't know, dude. I just don't know. Jared Goff, a little colder weather game here at a division rival, going to beat them twice.
Nope.
I don't know.
What I will say is Jared Goff has been playing very, very good, and I'm less concerned about like the whole Jared Goff going into Lambeau and the cold weather narrative, because I think he's a good player on his own. You know, I think we have enough of a body of work on Jared Goff to kind of like. I think he gets unfairly put in a certain category that he's not in. You know, he's not an elite quarterback. I don't think he's in the next tier. But like on that third tier where he's like kind of outside the top 11, 12 guys, where he's just a really solid middle of the pack starter. He can win you games. Like he's won playoff games, right?
But he's a guy, Goff's a guy that he's good when he's in a solid system and he's kept clean. He can run a system like that very well. I just don't know if I trust him to win the big game. Like, I mean, his offense, he had one of the best offenses like on paper. And I don't know, the 21st century in the Super Bowl to get to New England. And he only scored 3 points.
Yeah, very fair point. But like I said, I'm less worried about that narrative and more worried about the one you said before, where do we really see the Lions beating the Packers twice in the same season? No. Especially the circumstances with the first game, because the Lions, like, they came out and they hit him in the mouth the first game. You know, that was I would argue that was probably the game that really like turned the Lions season around, because at the time it felt like the Lions and the Packers were both heading in opposite directions, ironically enough. And it felt like that was like a head above water game, where it was like the winner of that game like somehow was going to keep their head above water. And it was a spot where it's like, you know how Rodgers plays against the Lions, right? It's the same way he plays against the Bears. We always pencil him in to win those types of games. And the Lions won that game. And the fashion that they won it was, you know, pretty unexpected. So To me, this has all the makings of a close game because I think both of these teams, there have been games here and there where they probably could have won. They're both not going to get into the playoffs, but they're both kind of like worthy cusp playoff teams. They both can't get in. This smells to me like it's going to be a close game. It's going to be like a 3-point game or a 4-point game. And I see the Lions up 2017 at the end, 3 minutes on the clock. Rodgers is going down. The narrative was, wow, the Packers were 4-8. They won 4 games in a row. You just see it coming, right? So I think that's what's going to happen. I think the Packers are going to win the game. It's going to be near the horn, right? I don't think the Packers are going to win by like a touchdown or more here because the running game has been heavily involved with their offense. I think the Lions' offense is good enough to at least be able to match them drive for drive in this game. But I think the Packers will edge them out. I do like the Lions and the points. And if bettors like the Packers a little bit because they've been the hot team, maybe a little more so than the Lions, and this line gets to maybe 5.5, that's a huge smash spot for you, pal. And I know you'll be on that. So I like the Lions 4.5. I do. But I do think the Packers are going to win. I think it's a good spot to grab the Lions with the points.
I think I think we're looking at something here. It's going to be very interesting. If it all depends on Seattle. They have the pleasure of knowing what happens at that Seattle game. So if Seattle loses, right? If Seattle loses, then I think the winner's in. The winner gets in.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that that's the case here. Let me double check. But in the meantime here, Joe, like, is there anything else in this game that you're looking at, like, or not this game, but like in any game in general? Like, is there anything else that you're really?
I'm very curious to see how the Chiefs play because that game is essentially a 9.5. It started at 10, but it's like was bet down a little bit. Jarrett Stidham looked really good at quarterback in that game against the 49ers, even though they didn't win that game, right? So I'm just very curious to see how the Chiefs come out. Because if this team comes out and they punch the Raiders in the mouth, they got to be the favorites in the AFC, right?
I think they're still going to be. I think realistically here, like it's a 9.5-point spread. I don't know if Kansas City's going to cover it. I came up with some pretty good prop bets for this game if you want to hear them.
Well, first I'm going to say I'm going to grab the points with the Raiders too because this feels like a smash spot for KC that's not going to be a smash spot. So let's hear the prop bets. I want to hear.
All right, so Mahomes needs 430 yards to set the record. And like, his yards total's been rising and rising over the last couple of days. So like some spots are like 325 yards. That's wild. That's a lot of yards. So instead of going with all the action, and I'm sure like 99% of people are going to be on that over, I'd rather go with completions over 27.5 to get to 28. And I'd rather go with passing touchdowns over 2.5. Because I think given how good the matchup is for this Chiefs offense, Mahomes always lights up the Raiders. Always.
The over and under in this game is 50.5. This is for the Raiders, this is the kind of game. Why are you going to run the football? You're starting Jarrett Stidham. You want to know what you have with Jarrett Stidham, right? So I could see Josh McDaniels saying to him, we're going to get you 40 passes. We're going to get you 45 passes. Like, we're going to turn this game into a shootout. Let's see if you can match Patrick Mahomes in a shootout.
I think that's the opposite. They almost won the game earlier in the season by running Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs had one of his best games of the year against them. So I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Mahomes is going to have a really good game. And if you want to take Mahomes yards, I would just take the alternate at 400. It's almost 400 plus yards is like plus 500. You get that alternate. I'd rather do that. Like, I want to root for Mahomes here, but like everybody ruins it for me. Everybody's always ruining lines, like, because this number has gone astronomically high, and it's not worth betting. I want to go on something where nobody's really on or very few people are on. That's why I think completions could be a sneaky play and passing touchdowns. So, like, obviously the one thing with the passing touchdowns, because he's going to need 3 of them, a lot of times what we've been doing the last month or so is he'll throw for 2 and he'll run 1 in, and it's frustrating. But I think those are two good ways to attack Patrick Mahomes. If you want to root for him and you want to see him have success, I think this is what's going to have to be. I mean, Mahomes is probably good to throw the ball about 43 to 45 times. I think he's good for 30 completions. He's good for at least 300 yards and a few touchdowns. I think he's going to light it up. I do think I could see Kansas City winning this game like 30, 31 to 24, something like that. I think the Raiders actually do come to play and have a good one here.
Yeah, I like the Raiders with the points. So is there an incentive in Josh Jacobs' contract if he wins the rushing title?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Because that's where I could see Jacobs coming into play here. But it's like I said, I think if you make the move to start Stidham instead of Derek Carr, I think you really want to see what you have with him. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring game either way. And I do believe the Raiders will come to play. I think teams, ironically enough, like I think teams secretly love trying to play spoiler. You know, there's always one or two games at the end of the season, the old week 17 days, now in week 18, where there's this should be smash spot for a team that's been at the top of the conference, whether it's a divisional matchup or not, but it's sexier when it is a divisional matchup where a team gets played much closer than you think. It always happens. So I think especially coming off with what happened with the Bills and Bengals games, with that scenario playing out at the top of the AFC, and the NFC is still very much in the air as well, which is what we like. I think the Raiders are saying to themselves, all right, let's see what we have, and let's see if we can go out and try to win this game. So I think it will be competitive and close, and I was shocked the line is too high. I feel like 7.5 is where like this line more should be appropriately. I feel like 9.5 and 10 is just way too high, so I'll grab the points with the Raiders.
Fair point. So let's kick it off here with the Gambling Yenny's best betting trend of the week. Got word. We got a line for the Bills Pats. For Damar Hamlin, he addressed them via FaceTime. After this whole thing, a matchup aside from the matchup, which I think is amazing, Buffalo Bills over 25.5 points. Seems low. The Bills technically still have something to play for. I think they're going to put up and drop a 40 bean on New England.
I think they're going to beat the crap out of New England.
Yep. They're going to thump their playoff hopes.
Yep.
I think the Bills put it on the New England Patriots. For their boy Damar Hamlin, this is a huge emotional game. I might sell the farm on this one. I might sell – if I had a farm, I would probably sell it on Buffalo to have a big game here.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills, baby.
Yeah, I mean, at a time they didn't have a wagon to circle, but they might be getting those back. And it's looking like a spot here where JohnnyVTV is looking to take out a sledgehammer, borrow Thor's hammer, and bop this prop. Let's go. Your Honor, no objections. Reason why is for our Emerge Player of the Night, brought to you by Emerge Sports Group, our boy J-Hen. Damar Hamlin, man, I mean, how can this guy embodies the Emerge Player of the Night, Joe? What do you think? I mean, this guy literally came back from the dead. He was dead. And he comes back to life, triumphant return, addresses his team. It's a great situation, the power of prayer. This is our guy, Damar Hamlin. We're rooting for him, rooting for the Bills this week. It's going to be an emotional one, and shout out to Damar Hamlin, man. Just fighting, just warrior spirit. Absolutely awesome, bro. Love to see it. Joey Cows, this is the only option for our Emerge Player of the Night.
Absolutely. Totally agree. With that, we're going to ride with the Buffalo Bills at plus 400 to win the Super Bowl.
All right, relax. I'm not on that train. I'm not backing the Bills. I've been pretty. Everybody else always on the Bills. I'm not going to be on there. I do want them to win this game, though.
Can you get me an exact Super Bowl matchup odds, or are those not released yet?
Let's see. Hold on. Let me try and pull it up. I don't know if I can get it right now. I don't think so. Why? What are you looking at?
I want to see what the odds are for the 49ers and the Bills and the Packers and the Bills.
49ers, Bills, I would bet is probably 10-1. Packers, Bills is probably
25-1?
20-1, I would say, give or take. Let's see. Let's see if I can pull one up here. No, they don't have the matchups yet.
All right.
They're like weird with those. Well, it doesn't matter. Well, the odds are going to change after this week anyway, probably.
Sure. But we're going to
Probably
ride the
gonna be a
Buffalo
little bit
Bills up.
action.
Buffalo Bills plus 400 to win the Super Bowl. Let's do it.
No. No. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry. I don't buy it, bro. I don't think they're that good of it. I think they're a good team, but I think their scales are tipped by a few great players. I don't buy them, dude. I just don't think they have it. And I've been saying this all summer. I believe for the Buffalo Bills, the loss of Brian Dable is huge. And it's going to rear its head in the playoffs in a key situation. It wasn't going to make a huge difference in the regular season, but in the playoffs, there's going to come a time, I don't know when it's going to be, where Ken Dorsey makes the incorrect call that I think Brian Dable would have made the right call. That's my opinion.
Let's hope it's not a Marshawn Lynch moment.
We shall see. We shall see. So, Joe, heading into Week 18, this is the final week of the regular season. What's your final thoughts going to be in regards to, what to expect?
First thing, are we doing this for the playoffs? Hopefully.
Doing what?
Are we going to continue to roll through the postseason?
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned it, and I'll tell you why. Next week, JohnnyVTV Live will be live from the clubhouse on Route 46 in Fairfield, New Jersey, an unbelievable hangout place to watch the games. They have 10 golf simulators, so you want to work on your swing while you're watching the game, grab a beer, some great food. We're going to be there. We got a couple special guests. It's going to be electric. It's going to be unbelievable. This is a place that I go every Sunday to watch football, and we're going to be doing a show there, and we're going to be getting you ready for the best of the wild card weekend, Joe. So I'm very excited from there.
Absolutely.
Are you coming through live? Are you coming through live?
I may make an appearance.
Will you? Will you come through?
It sounds good to me.
How good? How good does it sound?
What day?
Next Saturday, of course.
Next Saturday. Okay.
Of course.
Hell yeah. Let's do it.
I mean, that's probably one of the best final thoughts. I think maybe the best final thought that we've ever had.
Absolutely.
That's elite, bro. That's elite.
Oh, yeah. It is.
Well, here's what it is. I'm very excited. I think people need to be cautious of what they're betting and how much this week because there's only several games that really matter. A lot of key guys are going to be sitting. So I think you have to be very selective. Limit the amount of games you're going to play. Target certain games, ones with implications, like the Packers-Lions, the Titans-Jags, the Chiefs game, the Bills game. That's what you need to target. And let me repeat myself. If you want to bet on a futures award, you got to do it before Saturday. Don't forget. Anything else to add? No? Are you good?
No.
All right.
We're good.
All right. So be sure to follow us on Twitter. I'm at _JohnnyVTV. He's at JCalabrese. See you next week live from the clubhouse. It's going to be epic. If you're in the New Jersey, New York area, come by, say hello, grab a drink, grab your golf clubs, go hit the balls into the simulator. You can play any course in the country. It's going to be electric. See you there.